Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Bartik, and I'm the host of the Across the Globe Film Festival podcast. My guest today is Julie Landrum. And for the past 13 years, she's been a short film programmer for Academy Award qualifying indie shorts in different international film festivals, and most recently, the Heartland International Film Festival in Indianapolis, Indiana. For the past 8 years, 6 shorts programmed at Heartland have gone on to win Academy Awards, and 17 have garnered nominations. Julie, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Julie, so I just off the bat just wanted to ask what got you into programming, and how does it work?
13 years ago, I actually stumbled upon it, like not even really knowing what was being asked of me. So I just am a voracious movie watcher and went to church with the artistic director at the time for the Heartland Film Festival, which the Heartland Film Festival has had their main Heartland International Film Festival for 30 years. We're going on 31. And then recently started the Indie Shorts. So that's a more, it's a part of the same organization. But we always had the short film category. And he asked if he was like, anybody wants to help with screening, pre-screening all the films that come in. And I was like, sure, I've got time. I love movies. Let's go. And then he was like, well, you have a lot of time and you're getting through your films really fast. So can you help me on a higher level? And that was the first year. And basically I did second round and helped with programming every year after that. So yeah, it's something that I've grown and learned like as I stepped into it. When I first started with the festival, it was right before, I think it was the year before maybe, that we got the Academy Award qualifying status. I believe we got narrative first, or live action. And so it was like right before, so we had like a lower number of submissions, and it was kind of like getting your feet wet into it. And then we got the qualifying status and suddenly got double the submissions. So it was incredible how fast like it grew since then. So currently we get over 3,000 submissions, which is a lot to deal with. So
What is your job as a programmer, or just in general? What would a short film or just a film programmer in general do when working on a film festival?
sure. So there's kind of lots of tiers. And so you're like, usually there's someone kind of overseeing each tier. So first round is the films get watched 2 or 3 times by the pre-screeners, which is where I started. And then second round, like staff, or we have interns, and they'll watch those and kind of whittle them down even more. And then the programming staff, the programming team, are who actually have to do the terrible job of choosing which ones are going to make it into the festival and which ones are not. And it's always hard because by that point, you're only dealing with really, really good quality films. And so it's hard to say no to films. We can only fit so many in. So yeah, the team, the programming team, that's their job, is to then actually fill out not just which films are going to get in, but like how we're going to formulate our programs. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we'll have themes, and we'll do those reoccurring themes each year, like an international section, or if we have enough, like we like to do a kids program. That's not something we were able to do every year, but we always keep an eye out for that. And then there's the ones that kind of rise to the top. We're also pulling those out, and those will go to the jury, which will be voting on the finalists, the winners for the festival for each category. So it's kind of a multi-process there to try to make the programs kind of make sense. Mm-hmm. So when you're going to go see a batch of short films. You're not just seeing a bunch of random things that kind of don't really flow well together. So there's a lot of thought that goes into kind of curating an actual program when you go to watch one at the theater.
Is there a reason why you went into short film specifically as opposed to a different, maybe like features or animation or whatever the festival might have to offer?
So the short films does cover like live action, animation, and documentary.
Okay.
So I get the variety, which is nice. But I think it was the first thing like I was asked to do. And so I stumbled into it and then found out like I love it. I really love the short film format. It's it lends itself to like tremendous creativity. They're like genius moments where in a short time period, somebody beautifully crafts this complete story, you know, where it takes you through all the feelings and you're like, that was only 10 minutes, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's stuff that people can do with the short films that just it's not often possible to do with a feature or yeah. And then we have some short films where they've gone on to become features, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and we do have a lot of young filmmakers that listen to the podcast, but even speaking for myself, I find, especially with like student films or thesis films, even if the writer has ambitions to create a feature, they will usually write a short, either as its own film or maybe even as a little bit of a teaser. For many reasons, either that's how the project is set for the school, or there's budget limitations or this or that. But I find that a lot of young people do start in short film because it's just more pragmatic. Do you have any advice for, let's say, young filmmakers, whether they are in school or out of school, for how to craft a short, let's say, if they do want to make a feature in the long run?
We do get a lot from universities, which is really fun. And you can kind of, it's interesting too, because you can kind of see how different universities are kind of teaching their students, because you get a bunch of films from one university, like, oh, I can almost pick you out before, you know.
Yeah.
There's two things. So if you want to make a feature and you're kind of doing a teaser, make sure that it's complete, because I have gotten films sometimes where it looks more like a pilot to a TV show, or they were putting too much in, like maybe they were trying to fit their whole feature in or something. If it makes sense as a short film, like as a snippet, you know, then it's going to be good. But if it is like too into the bigger picture, like it's not necessarily going to stand alone. And we are looking for standalone pieces that kind of make sense by themselves. So that's important. If you're like shopping it around, you know, like a pilot, or, you know, trying to get it, I think that's a different kind of thing that you're making, as opposed to trying to get it into film festivals.
Mm-hmm.
But getting it into film festivals is a great way to get eyes on it and get seen and get a distributor and, you know, get that sponsorship for a feature to be made into a feature. So it's kind of like, which one are you really, you know, where do you have the more contacts, I guess, or where do you, you know, where do you want to put your money?
Yes, they can be expensive and
can be expensive.
I was interviewing a couple of young filmmakers. Luke Momo was one of them, and we just kind of spoke about, you know, the decisions to make when you make a film. How many festivals do you send it to? Which ones do you send it to? And I think a lot of people forget to kind of put in the festival, the aspect of just submitting it to festivals as part of the budget, because usually it's about the pre-production, the production, the post-production, but sending it to festivals, once it adds up, it is really its own branch of whatever kind of budget you may have. With that said, do you think every film belongs in a festival like Heartland? And with that, I don't mean necessarily, I guess maybe the quality of film, but just the type of film that you're sending it to. Are there specific films that you usually like or look into, or is there kind of maybe a pattern of which ones you accept more so than others?
It's a good question. Um, so I think in general, we like specifically looking for quality, obviously, as like the number one, and quality and like, you don't have to have, like fancy cameras and things like that to produce a quality film, like attention to detail, attention to editing, um, you know, all of the story components, good actors, like you have to have all the pieces in place, definitely. And I think that's what we look for first. And then after that, I would say we do tend to get more things with, high story content. We have some more experimental pieces that we will program, but it's not like our goal is to focus on that. Whereas I think some other film festivals probably do look for more out there experimental type things. That's not something that we're like focusing on. But I think that's also why like we are Academy Award qualifying, because we do kind of look at the full picture, and the Academy, the films you see showing up there are generally, other than the animation one, higher on the story, on the content of the story too. Animation is like a whole nother subject that's so interesting by itself, but because every piece, like every animation piece is
I've always been curious
yeah,
about animation, because I'm, sometimes it seems that there's different types of people who maybe, let's say, watch animation as opposed to someone who will just watch like, the feature films, the documentary films, but then they kind of stop once it comes to animation because they see it as a whole different, area, whether they think it's, cartoonish, or they think it's anime, or whatever the reason might be. What types of I guess, what kind of storylines are behind the animations? Is it similar to those that you see in others, or is there specific types?
yeah, animation can be, think of like somebody opening their mind and just starting to explore it. Like it can be no story at all, just going off your, stream of consciousness or something, and be gorgeous, we had I can't remember what it was called. It was several years ago, but it was all it was watching like a frog hop through like this scenery, and slowly you realize like it was an abandoned building, but like a luxury abandoned building. And then like at the end he hops into the pool, and the pool's got like a dead floating person. So it like sort of told a story, like something's going on here, something happened here kind of thing. But it looked real. Like the frog looked real, the scenery looked real, everything looked so real. It was unbelievable. And I think it was what does the Oscars do, special mention or something in the animation. Yeah. So it's phenomenal, like stuff like that, where you're like, in animation, we're not looking so much for story as we're looking for the quality, the skill, basically.
Interesting. With that said, I wanted to ask you a question, because, and I wish I could pull up the graph because I saw it a couple of days ago, but I forgot where I saved it. But it kind of showed a trend over the past maybe 60, 70 years from, the golden age of Hollywood to now, and how different genres and types of film play out. So, for example, maybe war and romance used to be, probably the top tier genre for many decades, and now has very, very low interest. I mean, you don't even see a lot of war movies being nominated for the Oscars. But then you have something like documentaries that before have not been so active, and now all of a sudden almost every other film you see on Netflix or streaming services is a documentary. So I'm curious, just in the 13 years that you worked as a programmer, do you see a difference in that as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because I feel like this same thing happens in the short film festival world as happens in like major production studios, where like, how the studios will come out with a film and then suddenly there's another like, here's a magician film. Oh, there's another one. Like, wait, did everyone get the same idea at the same time?
Yeah.
So every year that happens. Like, there was one year it was ghosts. There was one year it was space themed. That was probably around Gravity, like when Gravity came out. So I feel like there's always like something where suddenly everyone had the same idea and they all came out with it, which is always interesting. But then you're competing with all those other people who had the same idea, which is, yeah, that is tricky. I would say, so we definitely had a whole stream of pandemic films come out, which, like, some of them were excellent, but we're still seeing kind of those themes come through still. And it's kind of like, I don't know that people really are in the same place, this year. So it kind of goes pretty quickly, I would say. Like, if there's a theme, then it quickly gets kind of like old, if that makes sense. I think that we'll probably see a theme of Westerns come through. Power of the Dog was really good. And I already saw a couple short films, more in this sort of, not like a traditional Western, but more of a modern kind of ranching, so we'll probably see several of that kind of theme come through. The other one, I was trying to remember, documentaries, definitely, we see way more docs. And shoot, there was something else I thought of. I thought of it right away. Now it disappeared. Oh, comedies, dark comedies. So I'm seeing a lot more dark comedies, which is exciting because every year we're like, please, comedies, please. And it's always hard to find comedies.
Yeah.
And this year I've seen already like a lot of good dark comedies coming through, which personally makes me super happy. But I think that is something, like, if you look at Netflix, like a lot of the popular shows are comedies, whether they're dark or not. So I think that people are looking for that right now we had our, like, we were all happy and fine, and so we were looking for darker themes and topics, and now things aren't so happy and fine, so we want something a little bit lighter. So
yeah, it goes back almost, I think, to like, I don't mean to become a historic here, but I guess pre-World War II, where everything was all glitter and dancing, and then after you had the Italian realism and all that kind of came into play. I wanted to ask and I know that every film festival is different, so I'll ask about Heartland, the kind of setup you guys have for film festivals. Is there maybe a special thing you do, or the way that people watch films, or maybe something that you like or would like to see?
You mean like during the actual festival?
Yeah.
So I love our festivals. So fun. So we have the two festivals. So we have the Indie Shorts, which is in July, and focused on short films. We have like an extended weekend of it. But because it's in July, we can do some outdoor venues and places. We have some really good local partnerships that we use. And we've gotten very, very creative since the pandemic. So we even used our local drive-in theater, which was super fun. So I think like just being able to try new things and do new venues and new places has been super, super exciting, and everybody's gotten really excited about that. And then for our larger festival, we're one of the like largest cash prizes, I think, that is awarded to filmmakers. And we focus a lot on filmmakers, and we want a lot of times the actors get the most credit, or like the big production companies get the most credit, and we want to focus on independent filmmakers and really helping them and encouraging them and helping them network. And so we've kind of built our festival around that, which is also why we do the larger cash prizes, because we've just seen like how much that's needed and how that can really boost someone to the next level. We had a filmmaker win with his short film and use his winning money to go on and make the documentary Dear Zachary, which if you've ever watched it, it's devastating. It's so good. So yeah, we have things like that where we're just stay connected to our filmmakers, and then if they, submit their films again or their features, they come back with their features. It's just a really good community kind of feeling to it too.
Cool, cool. Is there, and this is a peculiar question, maybe there's really no anything specific that goes with it, but after, let's say a film is admitted, is there any thing that the filmmakers do, or people behind the film that sort of maybe market it more after they get submitted? I mean, I'm just thinking of high-end films with the Oscars, how they go and campaign for it or market it, show their faces. Is there any kind of that happening within these types of film festivals? Or
So I mean, with Heartland, no. So I know what we do, and I can say that. Like, I'm not sure what other film festivals do, but I was reading a really interesting article, I think it was in Variety, and it was talking about kind of discovery film festivals is what they were calling them, where like which is us. So we are not like, only pulling films to program if they've already gotten seen from, in big film festivals. And we're not like only going to show films that have big names in them or something like that. We're a discovery film festival. So we're going to take your submission and we're going to look at it as if it is great. And we're going to see, evaluate it. It's going to get seen multiple times and go through the process. Every single film has the same chance and opportunity to win. And it's just going through the process. So there's no like campaigning or anything that you need to do, because your film's already getting a fair, shot at everything. So
right. Do you and how does that work? Who decides? Is it like an academy, or is it a couple of people? Is there a Wizard of Oz behind the scenes? I guess we're all just curious.
Who's the man behind the curtain? Yeah. So it is, like I said at the beginning, it's like 3 tiers. So our first round pre-screeners, they all have to pass kind of basically like a test to, you watch some short films, you evaluate them, then we evaluate your evaluations to decide if you're, able to basically like articulate what you see in a film and point out the things that, like, if there's bad acting, or if the sound is off, is off or doesn't sound good, like there's what can you point out and how can you see it? So those people aren't just anybody watching your film. They're people who've already been sort of selected. And then staff and programming staff and interns also the same. Like we've all they've been selected for this job, right?
yeah, for sure.
But then the jury, it goes on to basically a jury of their peers. So a lot of our award-winning filmmakers come back on our jury. So in the category that they won in. So live action, judges, live action, etc. And we also will have like film professors or other film critics, people from that are qualified basically to be on that jury, and that's who's deciding the winners. So we don't have the programming team, we're just sending the top films to them and they're having that discussion and deciding the winners, voting on the winners. So we're not influencing that in any way.
Gotcha. But was there ever a film where you guys maybe did not accept it and then it went on to become something bigger than maybe anyone thought of? Is there something that comes to mind, or is there too many submissions?
No, I actually can think of one, because it was like one that I had a voice in saying no to. And I can't remember the title of it, but it went on to be it was nominated for Oscar in the documentary. And it was a man who made these gorgeous like cave he like hand dug caves. So the whole first half of the film was absolutely amazing and gorgeous. And then it like descended into this like squabble with his ex-wife or something and it just like was like, what happened with that? So and it was like very long. So our, I think ours is 40 or 45. I can't remember where it's at right now for length for short film. And it was very long. If you're going to program that length of a film, you have to really, there's a lot of like, do we not, it has to like hit all the notes. And we felt it was a little, at the time, it was a little maybe too depressing for our audience. Our audience has really grown and changed over the years. And we've like kind of pushed the limits a little to get them now where we can show a lot more diverse emotions and ranges of films and more experimental and things like that. So we're in a really good place right now, but yeah, at the time it was a little too long and a little too depressing.
Gotcha. And you mentioned about the time limits. What are do time limits kind of become their own categories, or are they all just kind of bunched up into one?
Yeah, no, it's all together, which is something to consider if you're making a short film. There are a lot of things to consider, but one of them is if you make a 10-minute film that's good and someone else makes a 40-minute film that's great, I may pick the 10-minute film because of time, like, so be great, like really great if you're going to make a long film, like make sure it's tight and it's, like compelling and something that's going to really draw you in. And because you can lose people, 40 minutes is a little bit awkward length, like even 30 minutes is a little awkward. And you can lose people. Whereas a feature, if you lose people, then you can get them back.
Right.
You can win them back. And as long as you end strong, a lot of times people forgive all the, any of the middle part where they lost you. Whereas it's a short film, you're only there for a short amount of time, or, like you're there for a whole program, which is a 2-hour time period. This film only has you for that. So you're gonna make it long, make it really, really, really good, which we do program long films. We do. It's just a lot harder because you're balancing, these were really good. Was one worth sacrificing to, that kind of.
Yeah. And just one more question in terms of, this maybe, is asked a lot, but the way did COVID affect the festival in any way in terms of the subjects of the films, or was that more or less the same? Or did you see any changes that came out of that?
With like films that are being submitted and like.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of like Zoom call films.
Really?
I was like, this is interesting. And one really good horror film that was like all about Zoom calls. It was really scary. Which we do horror, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we've opened that up as a category.
Oh wow.
So that's been fun. That's been very fun. But yeah, the Zoom call film thing gets, unless you're doing it, super brilliantly in a way I've never seen before, that's not gonna nobody wants to watch.
I don't think I've ever heard that before about.
Oh my God.
Being,
it looks like the Brady Bunch with all the boxes,
Oh, right.
You're like, oh, or just an interview, side by side or something.
Gotcha. Just to kind of slowly start wrapping up, I wanted to ask you, and this is a very vague question, but what do you see the future of short films being? And that could be sort of, anything we spoke about, or something that you would like to see happen in the next, we could say next couple of years, or maybe in the next decade.
I think short films are perfect for where we are right now. And because everybody's attention span just keeps getting shorter and shorter. Like social media is just encouraging you to
True.
like
That's very
click
true.
through those videos faster. I think that people gravitate more toward that. Like I've even seen some people like post a little, tiny short film on social media because it made a point, or it was something that they thought was cute. So I think people are using them in a lot more creative ways as well. So I think it's a genre that's here to stay for sure. It serves a lot of different purposes, but it's also perfect for the commitment level I want to give to something for my time.
Very true. Very true. With that said, Julie, I do have one more question, and it does have to do. Well, I guess we can. We could do one or two questions. One of my questions was, if you see if you have a favorite in the Oscar race for any of these short films, or if you had a favorite from last year's Oscars. Maybe you haven't seen that. I mean, I certainly haven't seen all of them, so I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, I have plans to go see it. We had some of them. We had The Queen of Basketball as a documentary.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
okay.
that one's excellent. Please Hold we also have that one. It's live action. It's a dark comedy.
Okay.
And it's really, really funny, really, really good. And like kind of a little deep, where you're like, oh, like, okay, yes. So I haven't seen the other ones, but that one I would definitely vote for that one for sure.
Julie, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We will see you next time. Thank you and good night.